We are live. Welcome back, everybody, to Behind the Tool Belt, episode 283. I'm your host, Ty Cobb Backer. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday edition. We will be back after our short intro from our sponsors.
TC Backer. Roofing, siding, windows, gutter, solar. Roofing, siding, windows, gutter, solar. TC Backer.
Welcome to Behind the Tool Belt, where the stories are bold, the conversations are real, and the insights come to you live, raw, and uncut. Every week, host Ty Cobb Backer sits down to bring you the stories, the struggles, the lessons learned, and the wins. No filters, no scripts, just the truth. Please welcome your host of Behind the Tool Belt, Ty Cobb Backer.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Wednesday's edition of Behind the Tool Belt, episode 283. This is the podcast where we dive deep into the minds of our industry leaders who are changing the game in construction, contracting, and beyond. We got to throw that beyond in there because we do get a lot of people on here that don't necessarily work in our industry, but do work for our industry, if that makes any sense. Like we might hire a chiropractor, we might hire a t-shirt design person, we might hire a marketing company, right? But in any case, they all affect those of us within our industry. So we got to throw the beyond thing in there. And maybe we'll rebrand the name Beyond the Tool Belt. Something like that. Who knows? Food for thought. Planted that seed. Maybe we'll water it later. But anyhow, I was digging through the archives and came up with a couple things to talk about today, and most of which I didn't come up on my own. Just notes, things like that I've jotted down over the years that actually meant something to me totally different than what it means to me today. A lot of this stuff, I was kind of reviewing my why. And for those of you that have heard me mention my why, I talk about my why. It's an area where I put notes. I just kind of titled it my why. And, but I think before we dive into that, I just want to give a big shout out to our team here at TC Backer Construction. Mike Torreo down there at the Bluffton location and Jonathan, those guys down south, they're crushing it. They're doing an amazing job. And the team up here in York and obviously the team down in Delaware, they're also doing a great job. And, but I'm feeling very inspired by the type of communication that we are having with our team, amongst our team members and things like that. Hold on one sec. I feel like my throat's dry. Got to get my veg vitamins in me here. And, but I'm feeling inspired by our team and the communication and the changes. There's been a lot of changes over the past several months. And I think a lot of us have discovered that what got us here won't keep us here, and where we want to go. And if we want to grow, there's changes, which that should have been the topic. Maybe it will. Maybe I'll touch on that a little bit more, but I'm just feeling super, I had a meeting, very inspiring meeting this morning with, our operations and production team and sales. And the communication amongst those group of men and women that are in those groups, man, it just is amazing. And the leaps and bounds and the growth, and to be able to watch each and every one of them, grow into the professionals that they are today is just super inspiring for me. And as a leader, that is one of my goals, is to help teach and train and mentor and sit back and keep my mouth shut, all in the same sentence, all in the same meeting. Right. And not to hold a meeting hostage. And it's none of this is about me or I, me. It's definitely a we thing. And, I think that's probably what inspired me to come up with the conversation that I wanted to talk about. So I kind of dug through some of my archives, some of the stuff we might have talked about before. And it really starts with entrepreneurship, the journey of entrepreneurship and why a lot of people get involved with entrepreneurship. And I read Patrick Bet David's, one of my favorite all time. I read it at least once a year. It's just such a good book, and I highly recommend it to anybody. But he talks about the 4 levels of why most people become entrepreneurs. And so, of course, my ears perked up. I was like, oh, shit, man, I got to dive into this a little deeper. And one of the first things he talks about is survival, right? You're kind of in survival mode, and you got bills to pay, you got mouths to feed, and you got all this stuff like you just, and I'm thinking about this, and that's kind of been that was my journey, right? It was out of complete survival, and I knew I had talent. I knew I had skills. I'm a roofer by trade. I grew up, on the production side of things, and came from a background of entrepreneurship. And big shout out to my mom and dad who have been my biggest mentors and coaches. My dad's still an amazing coach to me today, but but I think a lot of people get stuck in that survival mode, where they're just out for themselves. They're, pretty much really started for all the wrong reasons. Same as myself, whether it be a resentment, they put their 2-week notice in and got fired and decided they were going to go out and buy a truck and throw a ladder rack on. And that's the great thing about this country. Like, nobody said that we can't go out and put a ladder rack on our truck and, consider ourselves a contractor. And, some states vary where you got to have licenses and things like that. I know the state of Maryland's pretty strict on things like that. And PA, not so much. Texas, not so much. Florida is the big dog down there, where you got to pass all kinds of rules and take all kinds of tests and stuff like that, which I think, in fact, it helps level the playing field, and things like that. But like I said, a lot of people kind of just stay stuck in that survival mode, right? Where they're just trying to make ends meet, and they're just kind of doing it, to help themselves and provide for their family and things like that. And then the next level is, status, right? Kind of where you start to feel like you have arrived, that status, and proving your haters wrong. And again, this is talking to me right now, right? As I'm reading these pages, right? Like this is my story, and I think that's why I hold this book so dear to my heart. And he came out with another great book too, Choose Your Enemies Wisely. And it was perfect timing when he released that book too. And by no means am I getting paid to market Patrick Bet David, which I wish that we were, but we're not. But, and again, it's like, I guess my point of sharing this with you, one point is that, remaining a student, and remain teachable is paramount over everything. The moment that I start to feel like I know everything, and I think that's why a lot of people get stuck in that survival mode, because, and then that status mode, right? It's because they feel like they have arrived. They got this now, right? They got a couple De Niro's in the bank, and it's not there for very long, and they haven't achieved that final phase, which I'll talk about here shortly. But the whole status is, it's proving your haters wrong, resentments, fear, and then comes the nice house, right? Keeping up with the Joneses, et cetera, and it's all about status, right? You're building a big deck on the back of your house because your neighbor built a deck. So you got to build a bigger deck, right? And I'm sure we can all relate to that, whether, you're into entrepreneurship or not. And I think a lot of people start to slow down, and over the years I've watched businesses, come out of the woodwork, bam, 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 and it's like they just kind of hit this plateau and they start to slow down, and they kind of settle in at that level where they're kind of, just stuck between like that survival and that status mode. And then I think a lot of people want to get involved with it too. There's that freedom stage, right? I think they think, you know what I mean? Like all three of the first stages kind of coincide with each other. It's like, yeah, I want to start my own business so I can spend more time at home with my family and go on vacations and all these things, all these dreams, the American dream that we all hear about and watch on TV, and the vacations and the cruises and the jet planes and all these things. And it's like, I think that's kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit. It's a great goal. It's a great dream, to have that. And, I think everybody wants to make enough money so they can feel comfortable, but that takes time. That doesn't happen, in like 12 months. Sometimes, I heard something, I read it a long time ago. It's like, and I think this goes for any business, where it takes, the first 5 years work before you even start to break even, if you're doing it right. And, and going back as I'm thinking back to my journey here, I think for me, it was right around that time where I started to feel a little relief. And the reason why that is because every dollar that came in went right back into the business. There was no extra money left over, whether it was because of buying new equipment, investing in the team, investing in myself, marketing, all these overhead expenses that I'm navigating through, have zero experience with. It wasn't even that long ago where I actually bought myself my first brand new vehicle. I mean, financed it. Everything was built through cash. We grew as fast as the cash would allow us to go, and which, there's pros and cons to that, and an argument for both sides of using other people's money, which I've learned a lot about over the years as well too, and leveraging banks and distribution and manufacturing and things like that. But that was mainly through trial and error and really not giving up, and having the tenacity and resiliency of bouncing back each time something didn't quite go my way, but to come to find out it actually worked out the way that it was supposed to work out, and it worked out for the better. And there's a lot of fear that drove me, particularly, of I didn't want to fail. You know what I mean? I was in that status, where like I can't, and I'm not saying that I still don't suffer from fear today. It's just a different type of fear. I think, I'm not necessarily fearful of getting pulled over or the red and blue lights in my rearview mirror kind of fear stuff. You know what I mean? My fears today are, I would say, and Vic, you and I've talked about this for years, is the difference between healthy fears and not healthy fears, right? And my fears today, my healthy fears is, letting my family down, letting my team down, letting the company down, getting myself out of bed, not because I'm going to be late for school, but getting my feet on the ground, and thanking God that I'm able to take a breath this morning. And I opened my eyes, my priorities are just different, 180, where, I'm driven by different things today, not out of fear, unhealthy fears and resentments and things like that. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect and I still don't suffer from unhealthy fears and things like that, but, and resentment, I can cop resentment. And Vic and I have talked about this a lot too. I'm not who I used to be. I'm not who I want to be, but I'm definitely not who I used to be. And how I handle situations today is much differently than the way it was when I first started on this journey. I'm still not perfect. I can still be a doormat. I still go off the deep end. I have a magic magnifying mind, that tells me things that isn't necessarily true. You're right. And I think we all suffer from that, whether we know it or not, but knowing that, and having great advisors around you to bounce crazy ass ideas off of people or thoughts and fears and things like that. And I think that's where, having a good significant other can play a big role into that. Having a best friend that, that you can confide in and knows that you're not crazy. And I think half of that reason why they don't think you're crazy is because they're just as crazy as you are, right? Whether it be your significant other or your best friend or whoever it is that you choose to confide in. And, and I can't talk enough about, problem shared is a problem cut in half, right? But you got to be careful on who you're sharing your problems with, right? And don't make it where it's so annoying, where it's like every time you see that person that you're just crying and bitching and moaning, because people get the shits of that too, because nobody wants that negativity in their life. Right. And I've been on that side of the spectrum, both sides of that spectrum, where it's like, oh God, here he comes again, or shit, all I've been doing is complaining, right? Every time we see each other, I'm so sorry. And I think once you identify that, it's kind of like, okay, now I need to do something about this. Right. And if you got good friends, good significant other, they're going to call you out on that shit. Like, okay, what are you going to do different this time? What have you learned from this? How did you put yourself in this situation again? Or why do we keep going down this rabbit hole? You know what I mean? Because I think they would much rather want to step on my toes than my grave, right? Because stress will kill you, right? Stress affects me in ways that I never thought were imaginable, right? Not just in the stomach, but like, I get rashes, I get back pain, I get headaches, I get blurry vision, I get all kinds of crazy shit that I don't know why it's happening to me. And then I realize, well, I'm worrying about something that I probably have no control over. Something that never belonged to me that I thought belonged to me, right? Or losing things that do belong to me, right? And it's like, there's nothing at this moment, one, I can do about it usually, or sometimes, a lot of times there is, I guess. But what I wanted to say, which really didn't fit in there, is that I also heard a long time ago, what's wrong with right here and right now? And I want to throw that out there. I don't know if we shared much about that. If you really think about that small little comment, that short little phrase, what's wrong with right here and right now? Absolutely nothing. I'm warm, right? I'm hydrated, got a roof over my head, family's good, okay. Outside of any of that, what really matters, right? And what reps am I putting in to avoid things tomorrow? What can I do today to avoid, not necessarily avoid, but correct or take care of, you know what I mean? Because I think a lot of times we procrastinate. But the final phase to this journey of entrepreneurship, why I think, people get started in it's purpose, right? The purpose, my why. And I love this. This is my favorite part. This is my favorite part of the entrepreneurial journey. And you don't have to be an entrepreneur to have purpose. I think we all have purpose, right? Purpose to be a dick, purpose to be kind, whatever, right? It's however you choose to twist this thing up and smoke it. But, purpose for me, a lot of which starts with legacy, right? Like, how do I want to be remembered? How do I want to make an impact on other people's lives? And realizing why, I was put on this earth. And I tend to say that I've been given that extended warranty, and what am I going to do with that? Am I going to take it for granted? Am I going to take advantage of it? Right. And I don't want to take that I don't want to take advantage of it, or I'm sorry. I don't want to waste it. I want to take advantage of the second chance that I've been given. And it's like so many of us, man, take that for granted. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things. Zach Fisher's on here right now. I'm sure he's putting himself in a lot of bad situations, probably, most likely in his younger days, where a lot of us could say that, we shouldn't be here today. And Vic, you and I were talking about this last night, man. I just don't think, I don't know why. And I don't want to say I'm the chosen one. I've been chosen, but I do feel kind of special. And not special ed, some days maybe, but, rare, I guess, a rare breed of the threshold of pain that I can tolerate and things like that. But, just remembering, why I was put on this earth and pushing the limits of being the best version of myself, operating at the highest level of the pyramid and doing things that no one has ever done before, and that drives me. I want to surround myself with a group of men and women that want to achieve the same thing, that are bought into, this vision and help push them at times where they're feeling weak or they think they're not good enough. And I enjoy doing that. And I think that's why I felt so inspired. Lauren, who is our, pretty much our operations manager. I mean, there is not a job that girl does not touch. And she came from the medical field and she's been here, I want to say close to 6 years now, 5, 6 years, something, 4, 5, 6 years now. I should probably know that. I'm sure it's on my calendar someplace. But when she first started here, it was before COVID. So it's over 5 years, probably close to 6 years. So before COVID, Lauren started with us, and she had the privilege, or I should say unfair advantage, not necessarily the privilege, to ride with me every single day, every day, to get up on roofs, to measure roofs, to have me explain to her how things, are built, and our accessories and different parts, pieces, and components to building out a roof. And we were talking about that this morning, how it was like we were the dynamic duo, right? Like we would go visit homeowners, and she'd be in the driveway explaining stuff to them. I'd be up on the roof measuring things up and gathering the data while I was up there. And we'd get down and I'd get off the roof and join them in the driveway. And we were just a great team. But most importantly, it was hands-on, real world, out in the field experience with Lauren, who now handles thousands of projects a year. I mean, from the smallest to repairs to a blown off tab shingle to full blown projects of remodeled homes, and to watch her grow and blossom into the professional that she is today. And Ben, taking on the sales management role, and Jeremy Bender, shout out to Jeremy Bender, who we've known for a long, 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 long time, who finally came to work for us. And then of course, there's Glenn, and Zach, my nephew, Zach, who's growing into his position. And it just amazes me to watch everybody, but that doesn't happen without good leadership, right? Just because we have the right people on the team, in the bus, in their seats, doesn't mean that they don't need lead, and that was a learning curve for me. That's probably one of the biggest things I learned this past winter, right? Like my leadership style has to change. The level that I need to lead at is different today. And those who I'm leading are probably different people, where they're at in their career, how they need to be handled, and things like that. It helped me identify a lot of different things this past winter. Actually, I'd say that starting back probably fourth quarter of last year. So there was probably a good 6 months of me really deep diving into myself, right? Like if I wanted to be, and I started talking about it last year, right? If I want to be an XYZ monetarily CEO, then I'm going to have to change, because getting back to what got us here is not going to keep us here, especially at the pace that we're moving at right now. But all the while, we're helping others, having a lot, making a lasting impact, coming to realize that money is only a tool at this point in time, right? The ones that keep fighting are driven, at least for me, by something much different today. I'm just much, much more money, because it has to be more than money, because this shit's not easy. You know what I mean? And it's like, I had to almost get clear on my purpose. I had to reinvent a little bit of my purpose, and kind of broaden my paradigm, my line of sight. I had to broaden that up, but then also dial it in at the same time on how and who, if we're going to get this thing rolling in the right direction, or in a, not necessarily even a different direction. But anyhow, this all starts with great leadership. That there's no secret sauce to doing what we've been able to do here. I think really a lot of it had started out with me managing myself, right? Leading myself, taking care of myself. And if I can't take care of myself, then how the heck am I supposed to take care of anyone else or anything else? And then also, to be a great leader, you must know how to serve others. And I can't express that enough, especially when you don't have it. I had a little podcast with Tim Brown, and he's asking me questions about, if you're just starting out in the roofing industry, if you're doing $1 million to $5 million, what type of charitable things should someone do, to be successful? And I answered a couple questions, some of my thoughts and stuff like that, because a lot of this stuff doesn't cost the company. You know what I mean? I think he was speaking in terms of revenue because they can't afford the things that we do today, which is totally understandable. But you could also partner with somebody else on some other things that they do. But the most important thing, and I think this goes back to the status and survival mode, like when we first start out in entrepreneurship, is because we don't have anything, right? So we go into this survival mode, this survival of the fittest, and like we're making bad calls, we're making bad decisions, we're cutting corners, we're just trying to churn and burn some cash here so we can survive, right? And it's like, there's no way that I can give back to my community. That's like the furthest thing from my mindset at that time is giving something away that I don't even have, right? But how false that is, how false thinking. That's the story I'm telling myself, right? And that is the exact time that you need to give, is especially when you don't have it to give, right? That if anybody ever wanted to know the secret to success, okay, why are certain people so successful and other people aren't so successful? Well, it's because you're not serving. That's the bottom line. That is the silver bullet to success. Okay. That is, I don't care how much marketing you do. You're not going to keep it. Okay. I don't care how great your brand is. I don't care how big anything is. I was going to go off on a tangent of big things there for a minute. But I won't. You won't keep it. You have to give it away to keep it. And a lot of what I'm talking about giving away is your time to your children, time to your spouse, your time to your friends, your time, dedicating your time, giving your time to your community. There are so many things that you could do to get your team involved, get your family involved. There's soup kitchens. Okay. Every holiday. You don't have to do this big, great, grandiose 21 turkey salute, which we've been very blessed to be able to do that. And that's what I'm saying, and I'm not saying that our cup has been overflowing to the point where we have excess, excess, I think it's the word I'm looking for, amounts of stuff to give away. What I'm saying is it doesn't matter if you do or not, especially if your cup is overflowing, you better be giving shit away. Right. And I'm not saying you go to the bank and start pulling $100 bills out of the ATM machine or anything like that. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I don't think that's what they're talking about. I don't think that's what I'm talking about, where you sell the farm and just give it away. Obviously you got to be smart. You got to be strategic about it. But I think the more that you give away, I know for a fact, the more I've watched my mom go through it. I've watched my dad go through it. I've watched it, not, I've watched it from a distance with other very, very, very successful business owners. I can guarantee you, and you don't hear a lot about it, and that's how humble these people probably are. And I think a lot of people like Warren Buffett. You can't tell me he doesn't have a nonprofit. You can't tell me that he doesn't probably have multiple nonprofits. You know what I'm saying? Now, I don't fully understand all of his business practices to speak intelligently enough to know if he's, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there thinking he's greedy and selfish and self-centered, blah, 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 whatever. The thing I do know is he's very smart, right? But I can also assure you that man probably has given more away than most people probably make in an entire year. But he's not, you don't see it all over social media. And that's the thing. You don't have to. And to get off subject here just a little bit is probably why I think we don't advertise it as much as we probably should have, and thought that we were being humble, like, oh, we don't have to. But we come to find out that we want the team to celebrate these wins and victories and charitable events and things that we've done. So we're going to do a better job at that, expressing our, gratitude to the community and thank you for the awards, is whether, and we received the biggest award that we've ever received this year. I want to mention this. I want to bring this up. So every year we enter into what's called the Peak Achievement Awards, and hosted by the York Builders Association, which I actually have 2 meetings I have to attend shortly after this today. And so about 5 years ago, we were presented with an award that was called Community Involvement. Totally unexpected. It's not why we did what we do. And several years after that, we've received that. Now, the first year that we received that, I remember looking back at Chris Baker, and I said to him, and Vic, you might have been present too when I said this. I'll tell you here in a second why I mentioned Chris. Is because the thing I said to him is the real victory would be if and when somebody takes this award from us. Mission accomplished the minute. And I think we've talked about this before. Like, I wish somebody would come and get this award from us. Okay. Well, guess what happened this year? Somebody stepped up. Penn Waste, big trash removal company here in York, Pennsylvania. Obviously, Penn Waste. I don't know how many bicycles they built, but they must, it's thousands. They had built thousands and gave away bicycles for some Christmas thing that they did. I should probably look into it a little deeper. And unfortunately, I don't even know if anybody was there to receive the award this year for this, but we lost it. We didn't lose it. We didn't get the award this year. And Chris Baker looked over at me during the ceremony and he said, "Victory." It's giving me goosebumps right now. And I think this, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think this award was created for us. They didn't have one until we came along. And I think they just noticed, the association noticed the amount of charity that we do. Almost there for a minute, it was almost too much and distracting a lot of people from the jobs that they're actually supposed to perform on a daily basis here. So we had to reel some things in. But the amount of community involvement that somebody noticed it, and we weren't posting shit on social. We'd come home that night. We'd take some group photos and some selfies and stuff like that. And maybe a few people were posting it, but we weren't going all in on that, which is a shame. But we did it enough. And I think enough people knew because, and this is what I was talking to Tim about. It's been one of the greatest recruiting tools that we've had unintentionally, totally unintentional. Retaining tools, recruiting, retaining, and of course, same with customers. It's been one of our greatest tools for marketing our brand without even marketing it or branding. It's like, oh yeah, we saw that there was 2,000 people down there on the corner of Penn and Market Street that was closed down. Was that you guys? Saw it on the news. Next thing we know, the news is showing up, right? All just because we wanted to help with the food insecurity here in York County. So that's an amazing thing. And I know we talk about that a lot, and I don't really give a shit because I'm very proud of my team because we wouldn't be able to do that without our team. So big shout out to the team, everybody. Seriously, Kim, Mackenzie, they're up there crushing it. Sam, that little girl has grown leaps and bounds, not just as a professional, but into, a beautiful young lady, her and Tyler, pumping babies out. Better be your last one. We're not giving you any more time off. Just kidding. I love you. So anyhow, I just talking about serving. So not just serving others here. This is the other thing that we haven't talked about for a while. And again, I kind of pulled this stuff out of the archives, and I've missed leadership and entrepreneurship. Probably one of my most favorite topics of all, but the impact that we have on our families, our organization, our community, our industry, distribution, and manufacturing. It is our solemn oath to make this a better place than it was when we found it. So I wanted to talk about that, but there's other attributes too, and that's the ability to inspire trust and to cast a vision and a sense of direction, to make hard decisions and see that they are carried out, and to develop the art of delegating instead of trying to do everything myself. Right. And I'm just touching on a few key points here that I've learned and have read and read and read, and none of it probably made any sense to me as much as it does today. And I'm sure in 6 months or 6 years from today, a lot of this stuff will mean something totally different to me at the place that I'm in. But, making those hard decisions, right? That's the hard thing, because when I got into this, Vic, all I wanted was everybody like me. I could hate people, but you can't hate me. I'm going to do whatever I can do. That was what was twisted, especially I'm going back a few years here, and I don't want to show my age, but man, God, I could hate someone. I could hate you like no one's ever hated you before. I was the best hater, and judgmental and all those things. Today I got a different respect for our industry, those that are in it. To anybody that's out there doing this thing, I know it's not easy. I know it's not. Kudos to anybody locally that's in our area that's been in business longer than 4 years, that has other people under their watch. Big shout out to everybody out there kicking ass and taking names, and making those hard decisions out there, and learning how to delegate, and sifting through all this shit that I've had the privilege, right? Riding on my borrowed time right now over the past this year will be 17 years, July 17 years. And that's, who would ever thought, you know what I mean? We've exceeded the 4-year mark. We've exceeded the 10-year mark. We've been through a lot of shit over the years, and I've made a lot of bad decisions. I've made some real bad choices, and leadership, and the way my behavior and things like that. And now I get to see myself and a lot of other people at times. And it's like, oh man, God, that was ugly, and how sharp the tongue really is. I don't necessarily have to grab a hold of somebody and punch them in the face 15 times, right, to hurt somebody. And that's what I used to think. I used to think it was just words. It's just words. Get over it. You know what I mean? Be a man. All those crazy things, that went through my head, and couldn't understand why people wouldn't forgive me, until I've had it happen to me several times. Right. And it's like, oh shit, is that how I made people feel? No wonder they still act weird around me, or no wonder they're no longer in my life. Like I said, I was just sitting here reading Zach's, you can't be king shit without venturing through shit creek. You got that right, Bo? Got that right. So, getting back to the delegating instead of trying to do everything ourselves, this in turn means picking capable people, right? Making sure you got a good picker, right? I had a bad picker, still do sometimes, whether it's who I'm teaming up with, or, those I'm surrounding myself with. And we talk about this every episode, is we are the sum of those that we surround ourselves with. And this is so true. It is so true in so many ways, on so many levels. If you take a look at your friends, take a look at your friends. Hopefully that group is small, so you don't have to look too far, right? And look at their bank accounts, look at their lifestyle, look at their relationship with their significant others, and then look at you, look at yourself. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say about that. Okay. Look at one more thing. Look at when you were growing up and those that you hung out with. You spoke like them, you dressed like them, you acted out like them, all that stuff. So anyhow, picking, the right people for carrying out the particular task, and continuously, and this is, I fail miserably here, is evaluating their performances. I was guilty. I've been guilty of delegating, and delegating doesn't mean necessarily, just giving someone something to do without any form of direction or framework first, and handing it off to them with no direction whatsoever, and not coming back and following up, seeing how they're doing, or following back up and asking, trying to figure out, like, why isn't anything done when all 3 fingers are pointing back at me? It's like, 1, I didn't necessarily give you any type of framework to start with. And 2, I gave you very little direction to start from, right? And usually it's not a whole lot that you need to give somebody. Just a little bit of information, a little bit of clarity, a little bit of insight, foresight, and watch them run with it. Because and that's the thing about delegation is you're also helping them, you're also pushing them, but you got to give them enough information and the right tools and resources around them, right? And then watch that unfold and watch them grow and watch them build and create. That's the other thing about leadership too. Like, you can build anything as long as you're okay with not taking the credit for it. And I think that's where a lot of people get hemmed up. I've been around people, I've partnered with people where they just can't stand not getting the credit for something. It's all me, 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 me. It's all I. And knowing the difference of like when taking the back seat, when maybe just to ask questions, when not to, run the entire meeting or cut people off. And I still struggle with cutting people off mid-sentence and finishing their sentences and things like that. But I see it. I know I just did it. Damn it. I just did. I'm sorry. And I'll even say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for cutting you off. Go ahead and finish. Let them finish. Right. It's pretty cool. It's been a joy. It's not been easy. Right. It's not hard. Hasn't been hard, but it's not been easy, kind of getting where we're at today and getting where I'm at. Cause really it all starts right here, understanding not just my strengths, but also understanding, their strengths, right? And limitations is critical too. And once you've discovered their strengths and certain people's, limitations and things like that, and being able to push those boundaries for them a little bit. I remember there was this guy, Keith, who worked for us for a long time. And he was probably one of my first, I'm going to call him a project maybe. And he was with me for, even when I worked for my previous company that I worked for. He worked with me there as well. And when we decided to start TC Backer, he came with me. And I remember pushing him to points where he never even knew existed. He no longer works with us, but he took some of the tools that and resources that we gave him and taught him in education. We sent him to VOTEC inspection license. We had a garage. We were inspecting all of our own tools and stuff like that. But he took different person through coming through here, and it wasn't easy with him, especially because I was much younger than I was. But he was where my eyes, I think, really started opening up, is being able to push him to, man, I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to do this. But convincing him that it was a good idea to try it, and watching him accomplish the dreams and goals, not just for me, but some that he had for himself. And, sometimes as great leaders, we're crisis managers, right? Which means having to deal with problems for which there's no playbook. There's no playbook for dealing with a crisis. Sometimes I'm a marriage counselor. Sometimes I'm a freaking electrician and a TV repair guy. I mean, and everything in between, right? And, but I got to fix stuff. That's, people lean on me at times. And I'm always here for that. Most of the time I try to be here. I may not be there, but I'm there, mentally, and inevitably mistakes will happen. Mistakes will be made. Great leaders learn how to rebound, right? And move on. And that's probably one of the biggest lessons right there. Before we wrap this up is being able to rebound from, mistakes that, not just that I made, but mistakes that a team member or a client or whatever, but being able to rebound from that mistake, I think, has been one of the biggest learning curves for a lot of our team members. Because let's face it, whether is involved, homeowners, the general public, mistakes are going to happen, whether it's on our side, whether we can prove that it wasn't or was. It's not even in question. We just got to take care of it and make sure that it's done right. But, at some point in time, we've been working. Well, I started on this thing. It's called 12 Steps to Leadership. And a lot of this stuff came out of that. And again, that was just mostly some of the stuff that's on the surface, but I get a little deeper. Not that we didn't get pretty deep today. I kind of breezed over. And honestly, as the days and weeks and years and months go by on this stuff, I'm unpacking more and more and more and more of this stuff as time goes on. And a lot of it's starting to come to fruition and understanding of what true leadership means and what it's about and the purpose. So anyhow, I think that's all I'm going to have for today. We're about 47 minutes into this. I truly enjoy this. Thank you everybody for always joining us on this journey. And again, it's the same thing here. I'm learning more and more about myself on how to speak and things like that. Not that I'm a very good speaker, but I enjoy this. I enjoy sharing my experiences. I don't even want to say my knowledge and all that good shit. But anyhow, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you for joining us again. And we appreciate everybody. If you think there's somebody out there that could gain something from this today, please share it with them. Till then, you guys have a good week, and I'll see you next week.